Do you wield a lasso of truth? Do you come from Themyscira? Do you have an invisible jet?
This is Wonder Woman. You're watching Collider Movie Club. Welcome back to Collider Movie Club. We have picked Wonder Woman to talk about this time around because Wonder Woman 1984, it's pretty much here. So what better time to rewatch the movie, and who better to rewatch the movie with than Roxy Striar? Roxy, I'm so happy to see you.
Oh, this is me with my happy dance and my Wonder Woman theme song playing in my head and like back with you guys. This is so great. This movie is phenomenal. You're both phenomenal. This show is awesome. What could be better? Come on, 2020. Thanks for giving me this gift.
It's our holiday show, and we figure, for the holiday movie of the season, Wonder Woman, one of the things that I really liked on this most recent rewatch is, much like 10 Things I Hate About You, adapting very dense source material and making it into a popcorn blockbuster. And instead of adapting Shakespeare, they modernize mythology by way of Wonder Woman, just like the comics do, but in a new way. Holy crap, did they land that. I love the utmost sincerity at which they were able to say things with this tongue-in-cheek snark. I love that we had Chris Pine as an eyeline to receive the, what did she just say about Zeus? I love the mythology adapting elements of this film so much.
There's quite a bit to get into here. It is kind of interesting to see how they work in the Greek mythology aspect, because it's not necessarily something I know a lot about, so don't take any of my comments as such, but I do know that that kind of mythology has a little bit of a cyclical nature to it, the idea of creating and then destroying and then creating and then destroying, and that is essentially what you see here with, the destruction element being the war, and then Diana's presence maybe serving as the next round of creation.
Yeah, and I think that they kind of give you enough, Perry, for people like you and me who aren't necessarily as well versed in the Greek mythology or whatever it is that they are using as Greek mythology for this movie. They spoon feed us enough to be like, here are the 4 facts that you need to know about who is Zeus, who is Ares. We're just going to give you a couple of things, and now you're an expert. Don't worry about it. You're good for this movie, which I really appreciate because I'm somebody who asks a million questions, and I didn't have to ask any questions because they just were like, here's what you need to know. Don't worry about the rest. We've got you.
And I really like that they gave us the multitude of origins, because it's Wonder Woman. She has, depending on who you ask, 4 or more origins in the comics. You've got your New 52, you've got your classic 60s, you've got your reinvention in the 90s, and they're able to use pieces of each. So diehard comic fans feel like they're seen. Casual comic fans feel smart for being aware of the references, and people that aren't comic fans at all don't feel like they're missing out. And that's one of the things I really thought this did well, was it blended the comic book origins, plural, the mythological elements, plural, and it made us feel like we were experiencing a movie that didn't have to be studied before or after. You can dive in deeper, but you don't feel like you're missing out on some deep cut stuff. Like some genre films I feel like are a little prohibitive for the everyday person. Like there's a lot of times I'm watching something in a fandom that isn't mine that I'm like, I feel like I should get more. Like Star Trek films, I'm often lost. Whereas this felt like it gave me enough to really keep up if I hadn't read a single comic book.
And it encourages you to go and check out more of the source material to learn about those ins and outs. But another element of the mythology part that I really like is how it works into the character of Diana. Also, it's like we're basically talking about godlike individuals. I mean, she herself is a god, but that is not why she goes into battle. And she basically doesn't wield her godlike powers in a sense of, I'm going into this battle because I'm indestructible. She is purely driven by the desire to do good and to save people and to make the world a better place. Even though she is a god character, that makes her so human and relatable.
Not only on top of all of the comic book stuff and this having layers for everybody, but this also having layers for people who are interested in the source material or the other movies. If you are a fan of DC in general, then going into this movie, it can be a little strange or off-putting to be dealing with the gods, because for some reason, and I don't know if you guys agree with this, I feel like as moviegoers, we're more willing to believe in aliens like Superman than we are to believe in multiple gods and whatever that world is. Like, I feel like we stretch our mind for sci-fi more than we do for mythology, possibly religious mythology or just ancient mythology. And so I like that in this movie, we are represented by the Chris Pines of the world or by the other people who are fighting alongside Diana, who are saying, is this real? Is this area, does this person even exist? Like, are we supposed to just sit here and believe that this person's a god? What are you guys even talking about? So it's not just like we're getting thrown in a world and everybody knows all the gods exist and they all know what everybody does. We're getting thrown in a world where people are questioning and are surprised and are curious and are in disbelief of things. And that's kind of us too, being thrown into this, coming from the Batmans and the Supermans of the world.
The skepticism allows the villain to be more of a bait and switch. The skepticism allows us to question Superman retroactively because we'd already met Superman, and that gives us kind of the flavor of doubting gods. That sets up the mythology of Batman fearing gods invading. There's a lot more deep-seated mythology that's allowed because they lean all the way into the Greek stuff. I've always said that the superheroes of today are the mythology of our age. They have the moral compass, they're great long-form storytelling, they're all these things. But through this movie, they're able to blend all of that, and they're able to play our own skepticism and doubt against us. But there's multiple times where Ares says things that are exactly inverse of what he wants because that's the character that's stoking the flames of war. And because we are like Chris Pine, we don't believe in these multiple gods. And because even though we're seeing Wonder Woman act like a deity, we're still skeptical going like, but gods aren't real. And that's a really fun flavor and a really fun like line to walk.
You didn't stand your ground. You didn't fight.
Because there was no chance of changing his mind.
This is Ares, and he's not going to allow a negotiation or a surrender. The millions of people you talked about, they will die.
We are going anyway.
You mean you were lying?
I'm a spy. That's what I do.
How do I know you're not lying to me right now?
I am taking you to the front. We are probably gonna die. This is a terrible idea.
As somebody who is a massive Patty Jenkins fan, I mean, Eileen, Charlize Theron, and Monster is my favorite performance of all time. So coming into this, I was excited for Patty Jenkins. It is interesting how much this does feel like a Patty Jenkins film when you would think that the studio would be picking somebody who wasn't a, she hadn't directed Monster in what, it was 11 years apart or something. You would think they were picking somebody like her so that they could play a little puppet. And I don't think that that's what happened at all here. I feel like she really put her stamp on this, and DC did let her do so, which is also interesting considering there's so many things like release the Snyder Cut where we're hearing that DC maybe doesn't let some directors have their final say in things. But from my perspective, this seemed like it had Patty all over it. It seemed like a Patty film.
It's a little bit of a Patty film paired with a Gal Gadot collaboration. It's just when you watch every scene, which is basically the entire movie that Gal is in this movie, you could tell that she, to her core, understands this world and this character. And I feel like, not to take it off of the screen in a sense and into the real world, but when you hear the two of them talk about making this movie, making the sequel, and just evolving the character in general, you could tell that they not only have a firm understanding of who she is and where she fits in this world, but they also they know every single layer of her, and they care about it too. They care about the purpose and the value of Wonder Woman and what she brings to the world, even beyond the cinematic world. Just what seeing this character on the big screen can do for this world, which, it sounds like a big statement to make for something that, yeah, it's just a movie, but I'm also a big believer that movies can make a difference, and this one feels like it does.
I don't know that any of us would be here if we didn't agree with you, Perry. Like, definitely they make a difference. and it's wild because not only do I feel like Gal has an understanding of this world, I feel like she created this world. And obviously we have seen other iterations of Wonder Woman before, but not in the same way that we've seen other iterations of Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, some of the big ones. I think that going into this, she did have creative license to kind of tell us, this is going to be the Wonder Woman. When you guys think about Wonder Woman, when the world thinks about Wonder Woman, they're going to think about the character that I create. So yes, I have an understanding of the world around me, but I'm also going to add to it to the point that the next person who ends up playing Wonder Woman is going to be borrowing from me because I've contributed so much to this world, a world that already existed, but not in the way that some other characters exist in the superhero genre.
They also did a really good job in inventing this world, avoiding the origin tropes, because they trust the audience to go all the way in from the opening moment. And we get all the origin moments that are necessary, but it never feels like the Batman pearls. It never feels like the radioactive spider bite. It never feels like, her origin story. It's just a story that gets told while they're shaping this world to be so full and so definitive, like you're saying. But I also think what separates this from those other origin stories is, as much as we're working on it, we're not there yet. And comic books are super dude heavy. There's a lot of male superheroes, and the Holy Trinity is a borderline psychopathic rich guy, an alien from outer space, and a very strong woman. So the maternal strength of Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins is incredibly translated in this film. I think the maternal nature of the character is something that's so hard to even express in words without having seen the film. Like, the character on page sometimes captures it. The character on TV, I love that interpretation, but there's so much strength even when she's not fighting. The relationship between her and Chris Pine, there's such a maternal shepherding nature. Then her with the crazy vagabond group, and then the no man's land scene. There's so many scenes that are still so feminine, but so strong. And that is, how do you even describe that to a suit that's making a studio film? It's incredible.
Well, one of the things you just touched on a little bit that I always love about this movie is, even though Wonder Woman does fight a lot in this movie, that is not, the only way she can achieve her goal, or at least she learns that at the end. She doesn't save the day and save humanity strictly by fighting and taking down the bad guy. It's taking the opportunity to teach someone a lesson, to maybe put them on a better path and become a better person. And that is not necessarily showing, brute force on the battlefield. That can happen in other ways.
Like, there's no moment in this film where I was like, yes, we're checking a box. It just feels like the world, they expanded this world so immediately. From the moment the film opens, it feels like an established world. I didn't need to spend half an hour on Themyscira. I immediately understood everything it was trying to tell me. And that is such an impossible thing to do with this dense of a plot.
Although I wouldn't mind spending 2 hours on Themyscira in a full Themyscira movie.
Or TV show. Yeah, or a TV show, HBO Max. I see you. You guys could use a little good PR right now. So, pick up a Themyscira show. We would all watch it. I do think that on Themyscira, there were these opposing forces, though, that kind of show, I guess they're both maternal instincts, but kind of the two different sides of it, with her aunt and her mom as she's coming up, and they don't know how to raise her. Do we raise her to be a lover or a fighter? And obviously there's other reasons why, as they were concerned, and what the future would hold for her, if she got too strong, what that would look like, or who would come for her. But I thought that was really interesting to see, because usually when we see that, it's with a mom and a dad, and this was with a mom and an aunt, and they both came at each other with such love in their hearts and such purity and such wanting to make the best person that they could. But sometimes those are through different viewpoints. So I think that was really cool too, to watch all of these women around Diana have different opinions too, because not all women believe the same thing. I know that that's a surprising thing for some people, but not all women have the same thoughts or feelings or opinions on how people should come up or be raised or whatever it is. So to have this baller aunt and this incredible mom and have them both not agree on what they should do, I was like, oh, that's cool. That's cool that they don't agree on this and they want to raise her differently. That makes sense.
Lay still. You are bleeding. I'm sorry. Wait, Diana, wait. What have I done?
When a movie can spell out one of its themes with a character dialogue and it doesn't feel like you're pointing at the camera and going, what is this, some sort of Suicide Squad? I'm very happy. And I love the moment when Steve Trevor basically says, his dad taught him that if something awful is happening, you either do something or do nothing. And those are the only two choices. And that's such an important message. And I love that it didn't feel trite when said so clearly aloud. And that's kind of, that's one of the big themes of the movie is doing or not doing. And that's really important all the time. Like that's a timeless piece of advice. And it's incredibly well used in the first act of this film.
This touches my whole soul. To me, this is the point of the movie. I mean, there's a lot of points to this movie, but it not only does Steve Trevor say that, but also when Diana's leaving and she's told you might never come back here. And she says, but if I stay, who will I be? This is the most 2020 lesson, and why rewatching this movie hit me so hard this past week as I rewatched it in preparation for Wonder Woman 84, because it's about fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves. And if it's not about that, then why do any of us have any kind of privilege or ability? Like, if you can't use whatever you have to help people who don't, then what are we here? Why are we here? What's the point? There is no point. So I just really think that spoke so loudly and clearly to me, and is something that is, like you talked about, Perri, earlier, this is bigger than a movie. This is a massive life lesson, and this might be Wonder Woman might be one of the first superhero movies that little kids see. And if they're going to see this movie and they take something away, and that's what they take away, then I feel like this movie more than did its job. And especially with everything that's gone on, with now figuring out, obviously, all 2020 things with vaccines, and with the Black Lives Matter movement, and the wildfires in Australia starting off this year, and everything that's taken place this year. If we can't put ourselves aside and help other people, then there's no point. So, like, this movie, when she does that, when he does that, and when they do that, not in the beginning, but also in the third act of the film, as Steve Trevor does what he does, it's just, that's the point. That's the point of the whole thing.
So cool how they take a superhero and gods and still manage to make all of that feel so true to our own reality also, because, again, a point I brought up, it's not necessarily about winning the big fight against the big bad. I mean, really, more so than anything, Ares' way of sparking hate and violence is through influence. And the same thing could be said to actually, it goes back to the thing with Charlie. It's like the same thing is the influence, how you can kind of show by example how the best way to serve everyone around you is, in a sense. I mean, that everybody has a choice. And if you could use your choice to influence somebody else's choice for the better, like, don't just, sit still and not do anything, make that choice and act on it.
That's why, for me, and I know a lot of people disagree, and this is a little tangenty, but that's why the third act worked for me. That is why I know the third act is where people kind of break off. But for me, this third act more than worked, because it hit home the same messages it set out to hit home. Now, could we have had stronger villain situations and stronger final battles or whatever it is? Maybe. But was the message of this movie love? Did it start by talking about that and finish by talking about that? Yes. Did we see what happened with this incredible love story? Did we see people sacrifice themselves in the way that they said that they would, and there was that follow through? Yes. Did we see Gal think that one person was the villain and then it ultimately is the other person, but she rolls with the punches because sometimes you're wrong, even if you're a god? Yes. Like, every single thing that we thought that this movie was talking about, it really hit home and solidified in the third act. So I feel like it delivered on what it promised. And it's always been surprising to me that people are so anti this third act.
In a rewatch, I've softened on my criticism a little, not from a visual standpoint. I still think that majorly pales in comparison to the rest of the movie. But
I hear.
I think what you're hitting on is what works. And that idea of influence. I mean, think about what Ares does at the end of the movie. He tries to convince Diana to kill, and she has to make the choice not to. And there, Diana sets an example, and it's a pretty powerful one. And, also when you see how Ares uses his influence as a politician at the beginning, and then how he basically incites widespread violence throughout. I mean, is that not how this happens, in everyday life? It's not something where, a villain lands on planet Earth and just destroys everything necessarily. It's something that could be very systemic. Someone could use their influence in one respect, and it kind of, it seeps through the veins of our entire world. And I would say that the journey of Ares through the movie, even if I don't like the visuals at the end, I think it captures that very well.
what I would have done with Ares was keep the manipulation and never have him be the brute object. I would have had Danny Houston as the blunt object, and then that way the message of manipulation being stronger than a blunt object, that's the message of the villain to me, that when he's manipulating, he's more powerful than when he's just brute force. And I would have loved, that would have prevented the third act visuals, that would have prevented a lot of the things, because I also love that it made the world feel a little more real, that Danny Houston was doing like bath salts and being powered by them. They were like mythical bath salts that made him stronger. You could have easily had that be the boss fight people would want. Like, you know, that's Florida sometimes. It's right there and it's around the corner. But I also think that the manipulation of David Thewlis, that's such perfect casting. That's such great world building. That to me is more interesting because war isn't just what's the battlefield. War is the ramifications that last forever. And that's what this movie captures a lot of the time, is what war does to people that leave it, what war does to people that survive it, what we become, whether we fight or not, we're forever changed. And that's something Roxy and I have talked about with this movie. It's what you do, even if you're deciding not to do anything, is you going forward. And this movie really captures that. Like, the decision to fight or not is forever, whether you go to the battlefield or not.
Yeah. I am with you guys, because I'm not blind that the visuals of the third act do not match. I mean, we start in Themyscira and we end, I know where we end. Like I see it. I do. And Coy, do I like your pitch? I do. I think that there might have been better ways to do the third act, considering that the second act sets the bar so high that it's challenging to go into the third act. I just think the third act works. I don't think that it is as flawed, and I feel like people are so forgiving on some movies, and for Wonder Woman to receive the kind of praise it did, everybody's like log line on this is the first two acts were amazing, but that third act, and it's like, but that third act what? But that third act what? It didn't look as good. That's true. Okay, but it delivered. It sent the messages home. So give it a break.
Especially for the purposes of this show, like, it thematically delivered. We're talking about the things that really sting with the themes of film, 100% there. And I think that's even harder than like delivering visually. A lot of, especially superhero movies, we used to have the space hole problem, and then we had the gray minions problem. At least this had the VR Troopers Power Rangers problem. At least that's different.
If I had my choice, I think delivering thematically would be a top priority. And I think over time that has worked in the third act's favor quite a bit. But I also think that the harsh criticism of that third act comes from the fact that, that second act is near perfection in my book. And even the first act comes very, very close to it too. But I can't get enough of the fish out of water concept that we see in Act 2 in particular, because speaking of perfection, the on-screen chemistry between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine with that dialogue is so spot on. And the coolest thing to me about that concept in this movie is how it's used not just for entertainment value and comedic relief, but it also has real purpose. They are addressing very serious things that mean a lot to us in the real world, but they're doing it in a fun and entertaining way that lets those ideas seep in before you even realize it.
Yes, Perry. Yes, it's for so many reasons. I mean, when the boat scene, which is definitely one of my favorite scenes in the movie, if not my favorite scene in the movie, it's hard because there's so many great ones, but when she is so confused on why he cannot lay with her.
Does the average man not sleep?
No, it's the yes, we sleep. We just don't sleep with,
You don't sleep with women?
No, I mean, I do sleep with, I sleep with, yes, I do. But out of the confines of marriage, it's not polite.
Growing up in this world, as every person in here and every person who's listening to this and watching this right now, you all grew up in this world. None of us for 1 second are like, oh, that couldn't be a problem. We all know it can be an issue. It's been an issue bajillion times before. And she just is so pure and so loving. And it just shows that like the world is the issue, not we're all born with this beautiful light. And it's about how you're raised and all these things. It's just so true. And her talking to him, and even with like the comment about the watch, but you think she's talking about his penis when she's like, what is that? everything, the levity, it's just so good. It's so strong.
I think the part that winds up speaking to me most in that sense is when you get the montage of her getting dressed and trying on different outfits, because as someone who grew up a little bit of a tomboy and not liking dressing like all the girls around me, I'm like, yes, put pants on, be able to fight, be able to do what you want to do in your clothes. It makes so much sense, but everyone around you seems to ignore it.
I love when a character walks the line between childlike and childish, because that's what I hope to do as someone who talks about comic books for a living. Childlike wonder is something we should never lose. Childlike wonder is what keeps us alive. And I think the ice cream moment not only shows that, but it also, her stopping in that second beat in the ice cream moment is what I love. Her saying you should be so proud. I think that is essential, and that's something that humanity has lost so much of. We don't appreciate the fact that this is a show on the internet. I have no idea how the internet works.
None.
I can't comprehend it. How are we doing this? I couldn't tell you the first step, much less the 82 steps after. And that means other people had to make art out of ones and zeros that had to lead to computer programming, that had to lead to a series of wires, that had to lead to making computer screens, that had to lead to us being on. So much art happens from blank to blank. And so many people should be so proud of what they do, whether they're accountants or painters or actors or plumbers. They need to be proud, because that is art what you're making.
Yeah.
You should be very proud.
Thank you very much. You should be very proud.
That is the wonder human beings should have for one another. That is the appreciation we should have for such little moments. And I hope to always eat ice cream with that much zeal.
This could have gotten really corny really fast. It could have gotten really old really fast. It could have gotten, all right, we saw it, we get it, she doesn't understand this earth. But this is, to me, this is all due to Gal Gadot's acting. Like, this is just, if this was somebody who we didn't believe was sincere, this entire movie would be a drag, because you would just get sick of this, because it's a similar beat over and over again. But every time I'm like, yes, Gal. Yes, Wonder Woman, ask those questions. You bring your sword in public. This makes perfect sense. It's beautiful.
I think that sincerity that she brings to the role is what makes it, like pure and charming and genuine versus ignorant, which I guess you could look at it that way too. But because she brings that heart and sincerity to the role, it's so pure, it becomes infectious. And that's the point of the movie.
And then we have an eye line through Chris Pine, who is another of my favorite elements of the film, the Dudesel in distress. I have always referred to him as a Dudesel in distress.
You wanted to say that so badly, and I love it.
It's important
about
to me.
The whole show.
It's a very important factor of filmmaking. I like that at no point does our Dudesel in distress feel like it's for the sake of the movie. It feels real. And I really like that he's not weak for her being stronger. In a world of gods, if you're an above average awesome spy, you are an ant. But at no point do they emasculate Chris Pine for the sake of making Gal stronger. When she is behind him because he's trying to protect her because he's a chivalrous man, and she reaches out and deflects a bullet, there's no part of that makes him lesser. She's Wonder Woman. The equality that happens with a Dudesel in distress that is so charming, capable, interesting, smart, Chris Pine, just being Chris Pine. It's so many correct elements that really make the movie sing. No one else could have played Wonder Woman to me but Gal, but no one else could have played Steve Trevor opposite this Gal than Chris Pine.
Yeah, he was really perfect. And to put it all in a line, it's I'll save the day, you save the world. That's what he says to her, because he needs to save the day in this. She's willing to go, but he's like, I have to do this one so that you can save the entire world, because I'm still capable and I still can do a lot, but no one can do what you can do. And he sees that, and he's never petty, and he's never jealous, and he's never frustrated. He is in awe, and he's curious, and he's in love, but he's never any of those other ugly things. And so in some ways, in the way that she comes at it with such purity, so does he.
I think Diana's growth and her mission overall needed Steve's perspective, because I believe that there is great truth in the simple way that Diana looks at the world. just in terms of trying to inspire good and using what she has to put the world on a better path. But when she first goes out into the world, she has such a limited perspective and doesn't know the way the world works. So without Steve Trevor's experience, she couldn't apply her assets and her skill set and her power to the world in the best possible way. So as fun as it is to watch their relationship blossom and the comedy happening between them, he's pivotal to Diana's growth as a hero and how effective she's been in the DCEU thereafter.
Is this what people do when there are no wars to fight?
Yeah. Yeah, this and other things.
What things?
They have breakfast. They love a breakfast. And they love to wake up and read the paper and go to work. They get married, make some babies, grow old together, I guess.
What is it like?
I have no idea.
I know that's a big question with Wonder Woman 1984. Did they bring him back with purpose? And while I do have some criticisms about the movie, I don't with that. I think they brought him back in the best possible way. And one of the coolest parts about the way they brought him back is, yet again, his involvement serves Diana's growth as a character very well. And it was mighty exciting to see that in the first movie and continued in the second, but in a different way.
Yeah.
And I haven't yet seen it, so I'm not speaking. No spoilers for me, Internet. I'm seeing it tomorrow. I will have seen it when you see this in the future, Internet. I'm already jealous of you in the future having seen it. I like that the way that it's handled in the first film is usually gender swapped, and it's usually at the cost of moments of stupidity. There's always like the supporting character that bolsters the hero does something that makes them like, nah, they wouldn't do that. We met them in the first 2 acts. Why did they do this in the third act? That doesn't happen in the entirety of the first film. Steve Trevor stays true to the character while also supporting and bolstering where Wonder Woman needs to go. And it never feels like we sacrifice the integrity of either character for the sake of story elements.
I know we've spoken quite a bit about, the most important themes and the values that this movie has given us to think about and kind of take with us and apply to our everyday lives. So I don't know, if you guys had to kind of isolate the one big thing that you carry in your back pocket, courtesy of Wonder Woman's journey in this movie, what would you say it would be?
It's the fact that it is about love. Is that the most cliche thing in the world to say? Like, am I allowed to say that that's what you think of when you think about this movie? If everybody treated each other with love and kindness and put other people first, or at least on the same level as themselves, then perhaps we'd be living in a much better place right now. That's just kind of what it is. And this movie ended up making something that could have been so like puke in your mouth, cheesy, into this beautiful, joyous thing that I could watch over and over again. And not only is it one of the best superhero movies of all time, but to me, it's one of the greatest films of all time. It's about love. That's what I've got for you, Perry. I don't know.
Well, I got really caught up on my phrasing of an idea you could put in your back pocket when I think my mind was really like, what should I get tattooed on myself from Wonder Woman and always remind myself of? It's very tempting. But I also don't think you're wrong. I think that in its simplest form, the ideal that Wonder Woman lives by and operates by, like, why can't the world be that simple? Just do good and show others the love and respect you would want to get. And it really could be that simple to just make the world a better place. But I also don't think the movie even stops there. I think it does kind of delve into that darkness. And even in one of the lines of the movie, it kind of hints at that too.
And learn that inside every one of them, there will always be both. A choice each must make for themselves, something no hero will ever defeat. And now I know that only love can truly save the world.
So it's exactly what you're saying, Roxy, but through the realistic lens of understanding that, there's good and bad in all of us, and it all comes down to the choices we make.
But that's kind of exciting because it states the fact that there is both in everyone. And if the conclusion was that some people, you either got it or you ain't, you either got love in you or you don't, then that's a scary world. But the fact that we live in a world in which at least the conclusion of this film is that everyone has both, I would rather something be a choice than us have no say in the future of our own planet. So that does give me hope, which is another message of this film. And it's scary because we can't trust all people sometimes, but the fact that it is within people and it is possible, and I am somebody who believes in growth and change, that is a beautiful sentiment.
Hope to keep your childlike sense of wonder and appreciation and accept others' help, and that doesn't make you helpless. I love the messages that we are united, we are something together, it is better to do things together, and to show that gratitude when someone helps you, and to appreciate everything, and to really just stop and appreciate being alive. At no point does Wonder Woman not appreciate life and being alive, and I think more people should live that way.
I feel like this is the best way to wind down Movie Club in 2020, just with all of these messages of positivity and, strong values and ideals to take into 2021. So, Roxy, thanks for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I would talk about Wonder Woman every single day for as long as I live. This movie touched my whole soul, and you guys giving me the opportunity to end 2020 with you talking about this actually means a lot to me. And I really, really appreciate just the way that you guys feel about the movie and hearing your guys' thoughts on it too. Just, it's pretty amazing. Love, hope, all those things. I'm a sap. What can I say?
I love it. I love it. Guys, to everybody out there, thank you so much for watching this edition of Collider Movie Club and for all the episodes we've released recently. Guess what? We'll see you in the new year. Have a good holiday, everyone.